All right. Good afternoon, good evening. We are live on this fabulous Friday with the fabulous Sarah Irwin. Sarah, for those crazy people who don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
I know. Who am I? Who are any of us? So I am a former SAS general counsel. I was first legal hire at Tynes, which is an Irish workflow automation unicorn. So they're Ireland's latest unicorn. And I was hired by them after they did a Series B raise a few years ago to build the first legal hire, build the legal function from scratch. So anyway, I stopped doing that a year and a half ago to start my own business. I set up a community while I was still at Tynes called ITGC, Irish Tech General Counsel. And it's funny, it's kind of none of those things anymore because it's grown so much. It's not just limited to Ireland. It's not just limited to tech GCs, and it's not just limited to GCs. So so I'm a community builder, entrepreneur. I do a bunch of different things. Two things in particular. One is consulting and community building work for in-house legal teams based anywhere globally, especially here in Europe where I'm based. And then the other half of what I do is helping legal tech companies to, the founders to grow their brand and find new customers among their ICP in my community. So it's lovely. It's a sort of a two-way street, mutually beneficial. Everyone wins. And that's who I am and what I do. I have an English-y accent because I grew up in England, but I was born in Ireland and I live in Dublin.
We got all the scoop now, all the story. Amazing. I love hearing this combination of stuff you do, because what I realized is that more and more of us, whatever us and whoever wants to be part of this crazy club, is that we're kind of making our own choices of how we want to spend our time, how we want to make an income. And it's nice. I don't know. I feel like maybe in our generation, again, not trying to bucket you in my old
I'm not 20 anymore.
But I certainly grew up with a different work ethic and mentality, and I was taught that you work and you work your 40 hours a week and you have your full-time job and you get your paycheck and you're grateful and you kind of keep going. And I was in Microsoft for 13 years doing that. And then kind of like, no, wait, there's more and there's things. And that's how this little show came up, was just like, I want to try this. And I always tell the team and everybody I talk to, I'm like, it's all experimentation and you just have to own it. And some stuff works and some stuff doesn't. So you've got all these irons in the fire, it sounds like. Let's talk a little bit about, let's see, where do we even start? So this is called Contracts and Coffee. So let's talk about contracts, because that is my favorite topic. So you were a GC at a kind of hyper growth startup.
Yep.
Can I assume that contracts were an issue for you? Tell me what you did about it.
So when I started, everyone was really clear with me on what my team goals were, right? So number one was supporting fast revenue generation, not being a blocker, and building a fast legal function. So I was sort of simultaneously, doing the kind of legal ops side of building the function as a lean and fast one, and then also supporting revenue generation. And I took that really seriously. Sometimes people that worked outside the company would ask me, like, are you actually getting a commission for helping these deals close? Because I just buzzed off moving as fast as I could, obviously all the while managing, balancing that with risk. So contracts, that's the long way of saying contracts were a huge priority, right? Because, business-wide document, and, inherently connected to generating revenue. And so I took it really seriously because legal is right at the end of a deal cycle. I never wanted to be the person that was that was moving slow at that particular point. So they were a huge deal for me, huge deal. We, at the time we were expanding into the US, the majority, we were low volume but high value contracts for large multinationals, largely headquartered in the US, some, Fortune 10. There were many things that struck me when I first started working there. And one of them was I was almost always negotiating third-party paper. So like a big long MSA, totally inappropriate for a sort of an 80K SaaS deal. And what did that tell me? It told me, right, well, I need to draft my own template here. So, there's so many things that you have to do to tidy up or structure when you are first legal hire. So that was part of the job, was almost it was almost a sort of an education of the business users who were, like the sales team leading on the contracts themselves, to get them to understand why that was. It was changing things subtly, but bringing them on the journey as to why. And I use the word speed a lot because in scale ups, everyone loves doing things super fast. Yeah. And, and I did genuinely enjoy the kind of teaching and educating piece of sort of saying to AEs, that like having it's kind of stupid of all the stuff that is in this long MSA, like, an indemnity for death and personal injury, for example, or something to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, or something to do with like real property destruction. So anyway, so that's a big thing that you need to do, whatever your primary agreement is. Tidy it up if you already have one, or just write your own new one. So contracts are a huge deal for me.
Right. So let me ask you this. So you mentioned already, of course, we always have to mention we're balancing with risk, because God forbid a lawyer just says, hey, I'm here to get deals done fast. Because we know all our other lawyer buddies like, well, you probably then let a lot of bad words get on the paper. And I love that we are still conditioned to be like, of course, I'm always balancing risk. It's like I don't know. It's a silly thing that we've put ourselves in. But you mentioned all the things you have to do to really work with the business to educate and train. Absolutely. Yeah. How do you operationalize that though? Because the deals are coming in fast and furious. So how do you create a lean, mean operating machine around deals?
Yeah, so I had come directly from private practice, and the first thing I did was put manners on intake, what landed on my desk and how it landed on my desk. And I knew I was...
For those in the back, you controlled what landed on your desk. You are not here to say, yes, thank you, can I have another? You controlled it, right? You told the business what you want to see. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I, again, coming back to the main goal that I was told, supporting fast revenue generation. And I knew I couldn't do that. And that made no logical sense. I couldn't support fast revenue generation by prioritizing, say, even a contract that was not due to close for another 6 months. If it was the end of quarter, I had to just prioritize those contracts that week. So anyway, I knew I would sound like a dinosaur at a tech company, but I said, until I put in place a better, more appropriate structure that everyone's happy with, just send me red lines in email. Please don't send it an email and then send me a Slack message, because I work fastest in email. I know it's not an intake system, but it worked for me, and everyone could see that. I could turn NDAs in seconds. I was just so used to, having been a former corporate lawyer, like on M&A deals, I was used to working really fast, redlining and negotiating in the email plus word construct. So I just stuck with it until I put in place a better system. But it was really important for me to control how I was engaged, how I got contracts, and whether or not I even, reviewed one. And actually, even before I eventually bought a CLM tool. And even before I did that, I tried very hard to empower the sales reps to handle bits and pieces of the negotiation themselves, or just to try and get them to just use one NDA template and just self-serve on it. So I was even conscious of self-service as a kind of supportive device for the legal function very, very early on. And I know how chaotic it can be when you're the first legal hire, and you blink and 7 new people from the new function set up, or 7 new people are sort of walking past, and you're like, who are they? But you can actually, it is possible to get some control over how you're engaged and what lands on your desk. And you talk about this all the time, Lucy, what you shouldn't be reviewing, not just what you should now.
We're amazed. We're still amazed how many corporate law departments are functioning in this reactive mode. I think what happens is also we're conditioned, most of us start in private practice. I did as well. We're conditioned to serve and support. That doesn't mean, though, that you don't have the right to control what lands on your desk. And that's still I think that's still a missing gap, because we have so many corporate law departments that, as you know, are running to automate, running to buy either CLM tech, or right now, of course, it's AI. I need to buy AI. Where can I get AI? What AI should I buy? And yet they have no parameters. They don't know. They haven't decided what they should and shouldn't see, but they're
what are you going to do with it? Yeah.
I know. Now, and I broke my own rule. I like to always see how long it takes for a speaker to bring up AI. So, but I did it. I fell into my own trap. Curses. But since I've already done it, let's talk about that thing.
I was going to see if we could go a full 30 minutes without talking about it, but no, let's do it. Let's get out of the way.
I know. Oh man. See, that's how everybody knows that none of this is planned or scripted. But you know what? We are here. You are obviously in the thick of things. You were at a startup. I actually spent some time. I was going to say I would have did my time because I was at Snowflake for just under a year, and that was it felt like 20. But whatever. That's for another topic. But yeah, that kind of hyper growth craziness mode. And so okay, let's talk about hyper growth and craziness. What the heck is going on with this FOMO around AI? Why are lawyers extra? They're just like, they're freaking out. They're freaking out. On the one hand, of course, there's the whole like, we're going to take over my job. And we've heard that before. I heard it about outsourcing. I'm just too old to get excited about it, like overly worried. I'm like, sure. They told us it was all going to be outsourced. That didn't happen. Now we're all going to be automated. I don't think that's going to happen. But there's this FOMO that is insane. So they're afraid of it on the one hand. They are our people, our world, our community. They're afraid of it on the one hand. On the other hand, extreme pressure to use it, embrace it, buy it, launch it. You know, those two things are in like direct conflict. Tell me what you're seeing. Especially, I'm curious if it feels any different in Europe, like in your side of the world versus ours. But I'd love to hear your
thoughts. There's absolutely a frenzy over here as well. And I just on the unscripted thing, you've just made me think. I feel like lawyers going right back to law school, we're kind of pitched against each other, aren't we? You know, I mean, you have to be to sort of practice negotiation skills, for instance, and then pitted against
it's all
each
about
other.
winning. Everything's about winning, whether it's litigation or deal making, right? It is the win. Who got the better deal? Who got the better words? Who won the case? Good point.
Yeah, what deal have you got? And I feel like that is that's built into our muscle memory, and then that you're always sort of wondering what's everyone else doing, and oh god, I'm not doing that. I need to do that too. And I wonder, is that feeding into a little bit of the frenzy? Like I get, you know, in the US there are a lot of there's a VC frenzy on investing in AI, legal AI tools, right?
Thank you, because I think that causes half the bad behaviors. I'm sorry. The flow of money itself, the sheer amount of it, is causing complete crazy behavior. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's one of the first. That's one thing I bring up, even with CLM tech in general. The amount of money that flew in there just during COVID and right after COVID, it's crazy. So yes, just people need to understand why there's a frenzy.
Yeah, and I think that I also think it's actually in a weird way it's a wonderful thing because we're so spoilt for choice now as lawyers. Remember, like 5 years ago, okay, maybe a little bit longer, when no one was designing technology for us, they were happy for us to work without it. So it is an amazing position to be in. But that frenzy and then the number of tools on the market and everything moving so fast, which of course is inherent in AI, is sort of contributing, I think, to this like sort of attitude in in-house teams. And I think, we are kind of getting to a similar point in Europe. I think we're a little bit more tempered because we have the AI Act here. So we're sort of balancing use with, AI literacy, right? With use with risk a little bit more. We kind of have to be, whereas you generally move faster, do business faster in the US. It's a lazy generalization, but yeah. So what am I seeing in Europe? So I was in Stockholm at Pocket Law's AI Summit last week, which is really good. And I mean, Sweden is basically shaping itself up to be a leader, a European leader, a global leader in AI innovation. And I had a GC event of my own in Dublin earlier this week, sponsored by Wordsmith AI. They actually first vendor to fly over from another country to come to Ireland and see my lovely GCs. And so there's huge appetite. We're probably, and there is a bit of a frenzy, but we're probably slightly better paced because the AI Act kind of puts manners on everything. But there's definite excitement for adoption and curiosity. As well as a bit of a a worry that, it's not being adopted.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the AI Act for those who are kind of curious and give us a little 30 seconds on what? What is happening
Yeah,
over there?
absolutely.
I think it's
So the AI Act is it's kind of like the new GDPR, right? But for AI, and it's all very sort of it's all about risk categorization, and it's sort of permeated the whole way through everything that we do. And the latest, most sort of interesting obligation for me anyway is this notion of AI literacy, because it's not just all about risk. It is also being it's basically your competency using it as well. So that's kind of like the most interesting bit for me, because you're balancing the realities of technology with how it's regulated. Sorry, that's literally it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And that's AI generally. This isn't specific to legal tech. You're talking to legal. You're talking about AI generally, which is interesting, because I'll tell you. So in the U.S., we had a kind of a tech literacy model professional rule that came out. It's been now several years, but it was even when first starting to move to the cloud. I mean, that was enough of a transition for the legal community. I remember, because I was at Microsoft, I was like, it's safe. I promise you, it's safe. I promise you. I did that for 5 years. And so there was kind of this tech literacy obligation, which was interesting, right? That was like the whole, hey, the model, our rules of professional conduct now say we have an obligation to be tech literate. And with AI exploding, suddenly it's like, whoa, tech literacy has now become a little more nuanced, because I see so many lawyers now asking this question, which I love this. Well, what LLM model does this tech company use? And they'll get an answer, and then like, oh, okay. And I always want to go, what you can do with that? Good. Yeah. Good that you're asking the right questions. But now what? And I feel like there's a little bit of a fake thing happening too, where it's like, okay, I'm going to get enough smart questions. I'm going to ask smart questions. I have no idea what to do with the answers, but I'll feel better having asked. And it's like, what's the horsepower in this car engine? You know, you're like tapping on the hood. Yeah. I don't think it makes a difference, but to the decision making, I guess. But it's kind of crazy
GDPR always had a suite of regulations to do with AI, but the AI Act in particular was sort of very much rushed through because of the explosion of generative AI and the sort of inherent risks around that. And now I feel like I'm going into
okay, let's double click on the generative AI. I'm going to say something. I always love to say something a little bit spicy. I feel like generative AI is not where I want lawyers experimenting when it comes to contracting.
Okay.
The last thing they need is to have a robot deciding what outputs it's going to show you, because it's hard enough to get lawyers to embrace good old binary computer programming. If this, then that. If you put in, I'm going to be eccentric in the US, if you put in New York as the governing law, I'd like you to change it to Delaware. Don't be creative and throw in South Africa in there for me. And I feel like with generative AI, because you never know the answer you're going to get exactly every time. I feel like that is going to trip up a lot of lawyers really quickly, and they're going to recoil much faster than they would if it was just good old programming automation. But tell me, am I overly sensitive to it on their behalf, on behalf of my own clients? Where I'm like, I know why they're worried. I think the generative part is what's scary. It's not the automation, it's the lack of predictability. Because I see it. Like, why do I get the same, different answer 3 different times? I've asked the exact same question now.
Yeah.
So how do you coach?
Yeah, you've just made me think. One thing, and I mentioned this at my GC meetup this week in Dublin, we're not talking enough about the difference between deterministic AI and probabilistic AI. And you've literally just described probabilistic, where the output can change and you do need human oversight, right? So I think the best AI now you do have to also practice your prompting, because it's a bit like, this is like the new Googling something, right? It's like the new internet. And, we all had to practice getting good at finding things based on search words. But you did just make me think there. In fact, this might be my new question, to just icebreaker question for anyone, any in-house lawyer now that I speak to. Do you know the difference between those two things? You know what I mean?
No, I'm sure they don't. I'm sure they don't, because even right now, the terminology, actually, every time I bring up AI or I'm on any panel about it, whatever, I'm always like, can we just do a really quick taxonomy check? Because even some of the best, thinkers on this, which right now, God bless, everybody's an expert. There's a new one born every 3 minutes. Fine, whatever. And it's almost like to show off their knowledge. They're diving in so deep. I'm going, hey, whoa, your audience is still printing contracts and using a red pen. Literally,
Yeah.
I'm not being flippant or mean to my own community. That's a reality.
Stuff. Yeah.
Right? It's a reality. So we're jumping in and we're getting all taking LLM modeling, Gemini, no OpenAI. I'm like, whoa, stop all that. First, can we explain? I think this is going to be one of the things that needs to be explained.
Okay. So I suppose what I'm saying is, based on your comment there, you need to practice AI prompting, but maybe it would be a good idea to practice AI where you're using AI initially to build your confidence, where the output's always the same. So like using a playbook that where like it's always going to flag the same thing if you sort of, that kind of thing, as opposed
I hope so. Well, will it always? I mean, I worry about the always, to be honest. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm comfortable yet saying, if you do this, it will always give you the same answer. So, I mean, I guess mostly, but that's why the oversight is still critical. I mean, the oversight is so important. And I think you know, at the beginning when I asked you kind of how did you operationalize commercial contracting, when you were in a house, and you said empowering the business, which that goes together beautifully with the whole, hey, I'm going to dictate what comes to my desk. And by the way, what I choose to no longer see, guess who gets to work a little bit more on that? Business, right? And empowering is the positive word of saying, I'm going to make you do your job, especially if you're in procurement or a deal desk, in a sales role. But let's talk for a minute about, empowerment and using the tools to empower. I have a lot of attorneys also that are still going, yeah, I get it. And I don't want to do NDAs anymore. And I'm going to help the business do them. And it used to be a first step was just, okay, download this NDA template, email this NDA template. But now, because they're trying to generate the templates, kind of live time, I think the lawyers are now have another layer of worry because going, okay, I want to empower you. I've operationally accepted the risk that I'm not going to see all contracts. I've accepted that risk, just the risk of somebody else doing it differently than I would have done it. I've created guardrails, but now you're telling me that I can't guarantee the guardrails. I mean, how do we make them feel, how do we put lawyers at ease on using generative AI to improve the business? What guidance would you have to a lawyer who's like, I really want to do it, but I'm a little scared?
I think just practicing. Just I think one thing I think we need to start doing is creating playtime for in-house legal teams, so that like a safe space for them to actually experiment more, like try it, fail, fine, refine, and I think that's something that, I think that's something that we need to make more time for. I don't know what that would look like, but it's probably something that, if I were doing the exact same job as I was hired to do 3 years ago now, it's something I would carve out, like a Friday afternoon, like arts and crafts time when you were a little kid at school. They picked one afternoon.
I love that.
Yeah.
They what I've done, and I wonder if you think this will be, helpful, is what we do. And we've had so many clients who, they're coming, I need AI, I'm like, great, how do you use it today? And they're like, what? I don't. I'm like, hold on, you want to go buy a new solution system thing that's going to impact your day job, your core value proposition of being a good commercial contracts lawyer, and yet you've actually not used it for anything else in any other context. I first asked them personally, have you planned a trip using AI? Have you planned an afternoon of fun activities with your kids or whatever? So yes, like try it for personal, but even in the business context, and we've actually put this like in recommendations to really big, beautiful, wonderful law departments that you would think already are doing this. But I said, hey, use it to help you craft an email. Use it to help you review an email. Use it to help you build a PowerPoint. Use it, we have to get them to start using it in their day job where it's not, I think, as scary, or there's no where there's really very little risk. Help it summarize pull out one of those good old law firm memos, God bless, that you paid $50,000 for, 50 on a good day. Pull that thing out, and ask for a summary. But I do feel like there's a little aha moment where like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, are you seeing, like, do you have indicators you're going, I appreciate you're asking for this thing, but I'm not sure you're ready? Because we've identified these indicators, right? Like, I don't use electronic signature because there's still some risk. I'm like, then please don't ask me about the latest and greatest, AI you should buy. But
so do you think then practicing with things that are workflows that are sort of less complex than a contract, which kind of like is sort of permeates across the whole business, so practicing with things that
100%. Then you can, that's what I say all the time.
Okay.
Yes. Like what you control, what you have, what you can check for yourself and test, what nobody needs to know if it gets screwed up, like a safe space. It's truly summarizing long documents, not contract. Have it actually do a little review of a contract, do a contract the old way, and then go ahead and put it into whatever your company's already paying for, whether it's Copilot or OpenAI's, ChatGPT, whatever it is, the company's probably already paying for something. And if it isn't, consider investing on your own. Don't use the free one though. I do guide them away from that. The free one's good for planning trips, right? Like plan your trip, get a recipe, all that's fun. Write a poem, a song, that's fun. But I do suggest please pay, because everybody's asking also the questions about security and,
well, I think the free ones are still only trained up to 2023, or so. Like ChatGPT is the free version is just not even up to date.
It's not, which again, you're like, okay, if you're going to plan a trip and you're going to go see some historic sites, you're good. If they just open a new pop-up restaurant, it may not find it for you. Go Google it, right? But again, I think that regular users don't even know that, right? They're like, why isn't it not showing me that thing? So there's still a lot of chaos. And look, we've spent now 20 minutes on AI. We have a couple of minutes left. Let's shift away completely from AI, because I see some of the stuff you post around your first days as a GC. I love that stuff. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about going in-house.
Yeah, and I only started posting that to find members for the ITGC community. Let's talk about going in-house. Loved it. It was so liberating.
I loved going in-house. The best thing for me, it was very obvious at the firm, of course, was, wow, I'm really efficient. Oh, that doesn't bode well for me. Eek. Then I hopped in-house. I'm like, oh man, I could be a machine here and I'll just get more done. That's one. Yes, that's like the main thing. But in the last few minutes, let's talk about smart risk taking. And you talked about balance and risk from the very beginning. But we know in-house, if you're going to function like a lawyer, you'll be buried. You just won't succeed, right? You can't thrive. Tell me about the balance of smart risk taking and maybe some of the lessons you learned along the way, or what would you advise for law firm lawyers who are going in-house?
I think the smartest risk taking when you're in-house involves other people. I think it's a team sport. I think lawyers can be almost part of the isolation is being left to, you're sort of made to feel like you're the final word on what is or isn't a risk. And actually for a lot of it, it's taking a view on, is this process okay with you people as well? Is it okay if I don't review contracts that are worth less than 10K? Yep. Cool. Fine. So I actually think part of the smartness is the fact that you're not going it alone and just deciding everything yourself, bringing in the right people to support you so that it's a more nuanced decision. I think that's a big part of smart risk taking. And then there are obvious parameters like financial value. But again, like putting together your like a delegation of authority matrix, assigning stuff, that should all involve other people's approvals as well. Like you should make it a team sport, which in a way makes risk taking, it gives it more of a positive positioning then, if you're making it a collaborative thing across different functions. So that's what I think.
I love it. Team sport. I always say that, all these risk topics, if you aren't on the same page with your CFO, it's not, it's false. It's like a false sense of security around what risk really means. Because actually the worst thing you could probably do is not assuming too much risk, but not assuming enough. And that's what we see over and over again, especially in standard commercial contracting, the standard stuff, right? SaaS buying, all the purchasing, especially on the procurement side. Like I always say, start there. When in-house teams are a little bit overwhelmed with where to even begin, I always say, obviously NDAs, if I mention NDA again, I'm going to kill myself, but procurement, everybody's got procurement contracts. They're kind of this necessary thing. Start there. If you can't let go of some of that, you're going to have a tough time letting go, and in revenue contracts, I think. That's always been my advice, but I don't know if there's another way. Okay, in closing, we always like to stay on time because we are good operationally minded lawyers or freaks or unicorns, whatever you want to call us. But let's round it out. in-house frenzy right now, tech, automation, contracting. Where should legal teams start who are tasked with fixing contracting?
Yeah, I think they need to sit down and figure out, ask themselves some very simple questions. Ask yourself, speaking to people here, ask yourself very simple questions like, what am I spending the most time on? And like, why is it causing me a headache? It's like, what's the cause, not the symptoms. So, we all know what the symptoms are. You feel like you want to tear your hair out, you're moving slow, blah, blah, blah. But what's the actual why? Like, what's the why? But definitely just something as simple as, what am I spending most of my time on? That sort of makes my heart start racing as soon as I think about it. And especially anything manual, tedious, repetitive. If it's any of those things, it can and should be replaced with technology or outsourced. But you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah. But us figuring out what you spend the most time on is a really good starting point.
So what I'm hearing is take stock. Assess where you are today. Nobody takes the time to do that, but it's super important. If you don't know where you are today, how do you know where you need to get? You got to know where you're starting. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. We can go on forever. We'll have to do a second a follow-up. We always run out of time on these things. Great to talk to you. Have a great weekend. Thanks for sharing your Friday afternoon with me.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.